Welcome to the Village podcast. I am your host, Nicole Trumpio. My why has always been to empower women and amplify the voices of mothers. We created the Village to share stories and ideas to embody the innate wisdom of a village, but on a modern day platform. I hope this podcast inspires, educates, and informs you and brings you the joy, love, and light you deserve. Welcome to the Village. Today we are speaking with a very, very special friend that we are so blessed to have on this planet.
Thank you for having me.
For those that have experienced stillbirth, we wanted to create this space for you and to speak to you, to know that you're not alone, and that despite there being very little resources, this is the beginning of hopefully a lot more conversations around this.
Yeah. I want to acknowledge what a challenging conversation.
Yeah.
It's a hard conversation to have. Not for me personally. It's been 8.5 years since she passed away. But just in general, I find it's still a difficult conversation for people to hold. I think in general, in our culture, grief and death is a very hard conversation to hold space for.
Yeah.
Because it is a very lonely place. It's a lonely, heartbreaking place. Until you realize how many others there are. I mean, in this country alone, in the US, 24,000 babies every year are stillborn. In the UK, it's about 4,500. And globally, we're looking at 1.9 million babies every year. So it's a lonely place, but I think conversations like this are going to make it a less lonely place because there are more parents out there than you can even imagine who have gone through and are potentially going to go through this experience. So it's important to have support when you go through an experience like this, whether you have a partner or not. Like, people just don't realize 6 months after the baby's gone, it's like the phone calls stop, the flowers stop coming, and it's like you're on your own, kid, you know?
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, just have another one. You know, get back in the game, have another one. And it's like, babies aren't handbags. You know, it's not like you can go out and buy another baby. It's not like you're ever going to replace the one that came and couldn't stay.
Yeah.
So, you know, that was really important, I think, giving ourselves the dignity of taking all the time we needed to process that experience and to, you know, find ways to honor her life, to honor the love, and to seek out ways to continue to cultivate that connection to her energy that we felt in the room that morning when she came into the world, and that we still feel now. I started a spiritual psychology program, a master's program in spiritual psychology in 2012. And that I had no idea how impactful that program was going to be on my life. I had no idea entering that program that I was going to get pregnant and miscarry in the first year and have this framework and this container to really work my process through that.
Yeah.
Releasing and clearing all the misbeliefs and misperceptions about myself and my sense of self-worth and what that meant about me. And then I remember at the end of the second year, we came in and there's like 250 people in the class. And we always begin each class with a centering process, kind of like what we did before we started the session tonight. And the teachers would do this thing that they call calling in the light. So invoking the light within us, within the room, within the space. And But before they began, I was pregnant. I was like very early, but I was just sitting there, and I remember them saying that they wanted to do a special prayer for this couple in the year ahead of us because they just had a stillborn baby. And I remember sitting there reflecting on my miscarriage and how that had ripped me apart. You know, it was only 6 weeks, but it ripped me apart.
It was the first miscarriage.
My first miscarriage, which is so common. But I remember sitting there and I was like, I don't know how anyone could possibly handle that. I don't know how anyone could handle something like happening to them, you know. And then I got pregnant, and then it happened to me. But because of the program that I was in, because of the framework that we use to explore psychology. Yeah. The reason why, you know, it's called spiritual psychology, and a lot of people are like, well, what is spiritual psychology? What does that mean, spiritual psychology? And it's like, you know, if you look up the word psyche in the dictionary, like it says soul, breath of life. So you would think psychology would be the study of the soul, but it's the study of the mind and behavior. And so my teachers were like, we're really curious about exploring through the lens of spirituality all of the experiences that happen in our lives. Like, rather than looking at us as like human beings having a spiritual experience, the context for spiritual psychology is, well, what if you're a spiritual being having a human experience?
Yeah, I love that.
And so from that place, we get to look at all of the challenges that we face from a place of learning.
Yeah, it's a whole new perspective.
It's just like a whole new orientation to life.
Yeah, exactly.
So I spent 2 years looking through that lens, looking at all the challenges in my life from my past as an opportunity for healing, for growth, for learning, for deepening in love, for deepening in self-forgiveness. And so when
up until at that point, where did you feel like, when you look at that as kind of like a benchmark and you see yourself before the spiritual psychology and then after, what would you say was the biggest differentiator for you?
Well, going into the program, like, I was like, oh, this is another program I'm going to do to fix myself, you know, like in the background, But, I just think I was still deeply insecure and searching for purpose and meaning, and really looking to explore, like, who am I?
Yeah.
And why am I here? What is this life really about? You know? And just seeking healing. Everything I've done in my life has been to seek healing, to seek understanding, to seek purpose. On my bad days, low days, like really hating on myself and not knowing how to get out of that rut of self-flagellation, of just like looking at everything that I felt was wrong and not feeling good enough. And I walked out of the program feeling so confident and so free.
Yeah.
And with tools, like really serious tools to be able to work with myself when I went into those holes, when I went into those places of self-doubt. And
so did you come out feeling like, you know, an upgraded version of yourself, or did you come out feeling like a different version of yourself?
Well, I came out feeling fully resourced, you know, like ready to take on whatever was next.
Yeah.
And, you know, I got pregnant in the first year and miscarried at 6 weeks. And then that was the impetus for so much healing and a deepening of self-love just through the processes that we were doing in the classroom. And then, you know, in the classroom, we learned a lot about, we would do a lot of automatic writing.
Yeah. What is that?
So they taught us, I mean, there are different forms of automatic writing, but the purpose for teaching us this specific skill, it was to tune into what they call the inner counselor, the inner guidance system, your soul. And so they would teach us how to tune into that domain inside, to tune into that intelligence and to write from that place. And in the beginning, it can be like a little bit clunky because your mind is thinking, well, am I doing this right? Is this right? What am I doing? This is weird. This is strange. Do I have an inner counselor? What is an inner counselor? But when you let go and surrender into the process of just knowing that you have an inner guidance, separate from your thinking mind, that there's an intelligence informing every single cell in your body, and that intelligence holds a consciousness.
Yeah.
Like, so to tune into that was a very powerful resource. So when I would run into issues, I'd write the issue at the top of the page and I would just close my eyes and tune in and ask for guidance from my inner counselor. And I would just free write. And I did this for 2 years.
Wow.
So when I got pregnant the second time, I was like, I'm going to do this with my baby.
Yeah.
Why can't I tune into the consciousness of my baby?
Wow.
Right? That's not just a sweet little bag of bones and skin and neurons and organs. There is an intelligence inside that baby, a consciousness that can be tapped into.
Right.
So I started writing to my baby.
Yeah.
I started asking my baby, like, what do you need? How can I support you? And I would get quiet and I'd close my eyes. And, you know, sometimes it was just a sentence or two. I need you to slow down.
Yeah.
I need you to be with me. I need you to stop rushing around. Like, these are precious moments. So I kept a journal to her and I wrote through my whole pregnancy. I still have it. And, you know, it's funny because, like, leading up to the birth, I think the last journal entry, she was born November 26th. The last journal entry, I think, is in, like, November 6th or 16th. But looking back at it after she passed, and it was so wild. It was almost like she was trying to communicate to me. It's like, this is going to be a powerful birth. You are going to need a lot of support. Like, it just, you know, don't forget the love, that the love is eternal. You need to rest. You're going to need to rest. You'll need to ask people for food, for support. Like, it was just almost like, I'm so excited to meet you. I'm so excited for the love that we share. Like, it was just, to reflect back on it, it was almost like, oh my God, was she trying to like get me ready for what was coming?
Yeah.
Did she know, you know? And it's so, there's so many ways of looking at stillbirth and loss and death, and it's hard. Like, it's so easy to look at it as a tragedy. Like, on one level it is, right? On a human level, to invested that much time and that much love and that much energy into creating this child, and the anticipation of the excitement of holding this child and looking into their eyes and hearing the sounds that they make, and, you know, the future fantasy of what life will be like with this child. Like, it's, on one level, the loss on a human level is, I mean, it doesn't get
the worst thing you could possibly go through. It's catastrophic.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine going through that. I couldn't even, like, only through you have I even, like, had a little glimpse into what it could be like. But it's the worst thing that could possibly happen. Yeah,
and yet from a spiritual perspective, it was also the greatest thing. Just, like, sit in that for a second. because I wouldn't be who I am today without that experience.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the invitation of death, to awaken into deeper levels of life, to value your life, to value the miracle of your existence. I mean, the fact that we make it here, the fact that those two cells, the sperm and the egg, come together, and the division that takes place, the intelligence that takes place, the eyes form, the eyelashes form, the breath, the lungs, the brain, the heart. Like, I mean, like, I'm all for whatever you want to believe in. Like, I'm not opposed to the word God. I sort of look at that intelligence and energy and light and love in the form of like energy, universal energy that is in everything and everyone. Everything's manifesting from that energy, birthed from that energy, returning to that energy. It just, to me, but it's like if a baby, if life isn't like an example of like that energy, that God energy, that loving energy, like, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, from that sense, it's like we're miracles. It's a miracle that we made it. It's a miracle that we get to experience this life at all.
Do you have the belief that everything happens for a reason?
I do. I believe there is a higher purpose for everything.
Yeah.
That is something that one must get to on their own, though. That is not something, I mean, you can read about that in books and people say that all that time. People said that to us all the time. You know, well, God doesn't give you anything you can't handle. And, you know, I just wanted to punch them in the face.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Because it's like, okay, that's my insight to get to on my own. And, you know, there were days where I could like really hold that. Like, of course. Like, even when I was in labor, it was like I knew something very powerful was happening beyond my comprehension.
Yeah. So at that point when you were pregnant the second time, so you'd had only one miscarriage up until that point. You were pregnant. How was the pregnancy?
Amazing.
The whole thing, right? I remember you being the lift out.
Yeah. There was some
she was giving me foot massages. Just like we were laying on bean bags together, caressing our bellies, giving each other foot massages.
It was pretty awesome. I mean, there was some spotting in the beginning that like really freaked me out because after having miscarried, I was like, oh, is this happening again?
And then what did your doctor say about that?
Just went in and had a scan, and it's, you know, it was nothing to be concerned about from what he could see from the scan. Yeah. The heartbeat was really strong. That was like around, I think, 11 weeks. Yeah. And then we had the structural scan at 21 weeks. And that's when he detected an abnormality with a cord insertion. So we didn't really talk about how she died. You know, and nobody knew. We didn't know until she'd been born what actually happened. Yeah. So when she was born, she came out and her cord was completely detached from the placenta. Yeah. So we didn't know until, you know, the doctor went in and took the placenta out and examined the placenta and the remaining of the cord that was attached to the placenta, that she had a very, very, very rare cord complication. It's called a velamentous cord insertion. And, you know, I mean, I think the easiest way to explain it, the simplest way to explain it is like if you imagine a tree and like the leaves and the foliage on the tree is the baby, the growth, the flowers blooming. And then you've got the trunk of the tree is the umbilical cord. And then the roots of the tree are in the ground, typically. In the ground being the placenta. Yeah. So all the nourishment is being pulled up from the ground into the trunk to nourish the tree. Yeah. So with a velamentous insertion, have you ever seen a tree with like the roots are above the ground? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you have the trunk and then the roots sprout out above the ground. Mm-hmm. That is what a velamentous cord insertion looks like.
Yeah.
So this thing called Wharton's jelly that surrounds the cord that protects the vessels inside the cord. And so in a velamentous, you don't have that protection as the vessels branch into the placenta. So it's, you know, it blew my doctor's mind and my midwife when she was born. They couldn't believe how healthy she looked, like how robust and healthy and beautiful, just so beautiful she looked.
Yeah.
Because with that kind of complication, often the baby doesn't get enough nourishment.
Yeah.
And so, you know, when we found that in the scan, he was so cool about it.
Right.
He was so calm, and he's like, you know, there's nothing to worry about. We'll keep an eye on it. We're going to keep an eye on it throughout your pregnancy. We'll monitor the cord. And we did. We monitored the cord again, I think at like 30 weeks. She was strong, heartbeat steady. She was growing well. She looked great. The blood flow through the cord was great. But, you know, at no point was I sent to like a high-risk pregnancy specialist.
Yeah.
And I think...
Do you feel like that's...
Yeah. I think I probably should have been.
Once they identified that on the scan.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And then at the 30-week scan, she was breech.
Yeah. I remember like being at your house.
I was freaked out.
I remember walking from your house to the beach.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing your face, and I've never seen that kind of like disbelief, worry, anxiety. You were kind of like, what am I going to do?
I was panicked, yeah.
And you're like, I think I might turn the baby. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Just looking at it right now.
Yeah. That was one of the options that was on the table. The other option was a scheduled C-section.
Yeah. So you were considering both. At that point, kind of like, what are your doctors saying at that point?
Nobody seemed really concerned. You know, everyone seemed, you know,
How many care providers did you have at this point?
I had a midwife.
Yeah.
And I had a doctor. Mm-hmm. And I was seeing Dr. Elliot Berlin. Mm-hmm. Well, he was on the cards to talk to Elliot about turning her.
So you hadn't seen him yet?
Hadn't seen him yet.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I'd read all the books.
Yeah.
And watched all the videos.
You're the most, like... thorough.
Even the orgasmic one, I was like, yes, I'm so down for that.
Yes,
you know?
yes.
Like, you know, that was like, you know, and we had a bit of a giggle at that, you know, my husband and I. But you know, we were down the natural birth route. That's what we wanted. That's what all my girlfriends had. They'd all had midwives.
Yeah, they'd
all had natural births, and so I'm thinking like, I'm going to have one. Yeah, that's what I want.
You want a natural birth at home? Or in a birthing center?
Well, I was going to do it at home.
Yeah.
But, you know, like natural.
That was
I wanted
your dream
it.
Scenario.
Yeah. And I think, you know, that's the thing. Like when we read all this information and intellectually it all makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Sounds great. She did it and it worked for her. She did it and it worked for her. And I just think like, you know, I think I was a little bit... I don't want to use the word naive, but you know, I had a goal in mind. I had a vision. And that did not include having my baby in a hospital.
Right.
Because I was freaked out. I'd heard all these things about the interventions and all this stuff. So I was like, well, I think the safest place is to have her at home. And I think this sort of, you know, like, had I been more open, had I sort of had more conversations with women who'd had children in the hospital, like had I known that experience could be equally as beautiful, you know, maybe I would have been more open to it. But I was scared. Like I was scared. I didn't want to be cut open.
Yeah.
And have my baby taken out. So, you know, when the midwife and the doctor...
And also at this point, there was no... real issue.
Well, we didn't know.
Other than her being breached, right?
Yeah.
Like nobody was really addressing that could have been an issue.
Turning her with the... Yeah.
Well, just even the way that the cord was inserted at that point. The doctor wasn't concerned about it.
No.
So you had a breech baby. You know, we spoke to Dr. Berlin. It's normal,
very common
to flip a baby.
Yeah.
So you're not considering that it could be dangerous
well,
at this point.
If that was a possibility.
Yeah.
You know, we did the acupuncture. We did all the stuff to turn. There were certain yoga asanas and postures you can do to help. I was doing all of that.
Yeah.
And nothing was really, she wasn't showing any signs that she was going to turn on her own.
Were you riding with her at this point too?
I was, but I don't think I asked her.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I had a little altar set up. It's so funny, all this stuff, like in hindsight, like that I found, like my journals after she died and collages that I made after she died, but found reflected back on afterwards. And there was a drawing that I made, and I had sat it on the altar of her turning. And it's so weird. Like I drew this woman, the belly, I drew the baby face down. But there was no cord or placenta in the image. And then I had took out my like crayons and I'd like coloured in all this yellow light around the picture. But it was the kind of yellow where you can't really see it very well. So I was going through all my other crayons and I found a red one. And I started drawing red, this swirling red, like energy. And then, you know, when I revisited that image later, it was almost like some part of my subconscious know that, like, was that the blood? Was that, you know, because there was no indication, you know, that she was going to die. There was everything looked great. She was great. Every ultrasound we did after we turned her, she was fine. And something happened, we don't know, so we turned her.
What was the process like?
We turned her at 36 weeks. Oh, so it wasn't you just go in and they like turn the baby.
Yeah.
You're on a bed.
Yeah.
It's inverted.
Yeah.
He does a lot of like muscular release around the womb. And then, you know, if the baby descends and there's space, like if they don't, he won't touch the baby.
Yeah.
But like, you know, she descended, there was a lot of space. And then on the first session, like he's like, I don't think she wants to move. So we were like, great. I went away. I came back. We went on the inversion bed again.
Yeah.
He did some psoas release work.
Yeah.
There was the space there. He started to turn her. He's like, I don't think she wants to turn. Great.
Yeah.
So this went on. I think I had like 5 or 6 sessions with him. And on the 6th session, she flipped. Easy.
Yeah.
And then the bed comes back
upright. So these sessions are, how long are these sessions, would you say?
I don't remember exactly. I mean, he would be a better person to ask, but I think like 45 minutes to an hour.
Right.
Like it's very gentle. Like the room is very dim. The lighting is dim. There's like a lot of massage and relaxation that happens
opening
before.
up the body.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not
and
like
at no point did he force anything.
Yeah.
Which I really, really appreciated.
Yeah.
You know, but I think in hindsight, like anyone, because I had a friend call me a couple of months ago. She said, I plan to have my baby at home. He's turned breech. What do I do? And I was like, have you checked the cord insertion? She said, no. I said, don't you dare turn that baby.
Yeah. Check
the cord insertion. She's like, great, thank you.
Is that something that's like a part of the protocol?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't think Berlin asked me about the cord insertion. I don't think my doctors informed him. I don't know if they were really paying attention. You know, it's like these doctors and these midwives, they have a lot of patients. Like I signed up with this birthing center and there was a rotation of midwives. I didn't realize that was going to happen. I thought you just had your midwife and that was it. And I had the one I wanted. I fell in love with her right away. I was like, you're my person. you know, and she said, I'll do everything in my power to be at your birth, but if in the event I'm at another birth, you will have another midwife. So we were rotating through, getting to know them all.
Yeah.
And, you know, we ended up having her, which was amazing. She was incredible. But, like, I just think, like, I mean, if there's anything I could share, there's so much I want to share, but if there's anything I could share, like I was saying before, you know, we started filming, like, I think it is so vital to get in touch with that intelligence inside of yourself and start to cultivate that deep inner listening of your body, of your baby, and to not second guess it. There's something that doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Something feels off. Say something.
Yeah.
Bring that forward into the space. And even when you bring it forward and they're like, well, this happens all the time, or this is so common, you know, your spotting is come in tomorrow, you know, but you still feel like, I don't know, this doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah.
Like, take the initiative.
Yeah. It's so important. Like,
it doesn't matter if you piss somebody off or you seem like crazy. Like, you have to honor that. Like, because before we turned her, I was asking my mom, like, why do you think she hasn't turned yet?
Yeah.
And she said, I don't know, darling. Maybe she feels comfortable in that position. Maybe she feels safe in that position.
Yeah.
She turned for a reason. Maybe she feels safe there, you know? And so there was always this question of, like, should I have turned her? You know, clearly turning her didn't kill her, but it definitely compromised the situation, for sure. I mean, I don't have the evidence of that, but, like, there's just a knowing of, like, oh, you have a complicated cord insertion and you're turning the baby. Something about that doesn't, you know.
Yeah.
But I was kind of, like, really, I mean, you could ask my husband. He was like, you really wanted to have that home birth? Like, he was on board with it.
Yeah.
But, you know, I just think, like, reading the books is a great idea. Watching the films is a great idea.
Yeah.
Like, but at the moment, it seems like there are two camps. There's the home birth camp and the hospital camp, and you're either in one or the other. And there's a lot of judgment that goes back and forth about the crazy women who want to give birth at home in the water, and then the crazy women who go to the hospital because they're going to have all these interventions. And I feel like we need to get to a place in this conversation where we talk about the middle path.
Yes.
What is the middle path?
Yes.
What does the middle path look like?
Yes.
You know?
I'm really interested in that space because I've had both.
Yeah.
You know, myself, and I have family and friends around me that have had both.
Yeah.
In the complete polar opposite of my experience for both.
Yeah.
And, you know, when we talk about this, I really do want to create a neutral space for this because both have pros and cons.
Sure.
And it's really about what you're talking about is tapping into what's right for you.
The individuated process.
But you're absolutely right that there's this other variable of the judgment, because if you as a person seem like a home birth stereotype of person, you have this inkling like maybe a hospital's right for me.
Maybe I need to pivot.
Maybe you need to pivot, but it's like, then what's my community or my side gonna decide about me? And so it's really about dropping all judgment, period. Yeah. Normalizing everything and saying, you know, we need to look into that innate wisdom, and also identifying that doctors are human.
Totally.
They're totally imperfect.
Totally.
So we can't 100% rely on a doctor, just like we can't 100% rely on a lawyer or an accountant to do our tax the correct way.
Yeah.
We have to take responsibility in some way, shape, or form. It is not taught that way.
Yeah.
We are taught to put our trust fully
Because they're the experts.
People that, exactly, and the experts.
But like I was saying before, they don't live inside your body.
They don't. And
they're not attuned to the subtleties of what's arising within your body.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, how do we teach parents that? How do we teach, you know, mothers birthing people? Like, how do we teach them to tap into that?
That's like,
and to not only tap into it, but to honor that when it arises. You know, because you could have a doctor saying, you know, I see this all the time. You need to relax, whatever.
Yeah.
It's okay. Take it easy, you know, and then you can sort of start to question yourself. I mean, I know I did. I questioned myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a hospital birth and it was awesome. Mm-hmm. They were amazing and they were so kind and so loving and so compassionate. And it's like, well, you could go, well, yeah, because your baby was dead, you know. But I had a great experience. I had amazing nurses, Stephanie and Adam and my midwife and, you know, one of my closest friends there and my mom.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was a velamentous cord insertion.
So can we, like, I don't know if you feel like comfortable, but can we talk about like what happened that day?
So I went to bed at like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
My mum was arriving from a flight from Perth at 8 o'clock in the morning. We'd sent a car to pick her up from the airport and bring her to the house. That night I was like frantically like making lists. I got to get this, I got to get that. I was like so panicked that I wouldn't have everything ready. I made a list of things to ask friends for. I was spiraling, I was looping. I was in this zone of like, I don't know, it was like, I felt like I needed to get all this stuff ready and it was late, you know, at like midnight, Steve's like, come to bed, you know, because he's on the upper floor. And I'm like, I'm coming. And I'm just like, what don't I have yet? What do I need to get? You know, I'm just shuffling all this information backwards and forwards, feeling super anxious and not prepared at all. You know, baby was coming in like 5 days or a couple of days. You know, I was in that window. Mum was arriving. I'm online, I'm researching, I'm like, and then like around 1:32 in the morning, I'm like working on my computer and I see out the corner of my eye this flash of light and I turn to look and there's nothing there, but it was just like this, like if someone had like a flash that went off, but it was like a golden yellow color. It made me turn my head and look. And again, Steve's like, Libby, you have to come to bed. What are you doing? This is crazy. You can deal with this in the morning. So I close my computer. I walk upstairs. I get into bed. And I'm laying there and I fall asleep. And then I know I set my alarm. I know Mum's going to come around like 8:30, 9. So I get up just like a couple of hours later, like not rested at all. And in my mind, it's like, this is not what I wanted for myself. I wanted to rest. I wanted to take a couple of weeks, you know, rest, rest, and be ready. So my mum arrives. She's exhausted, but excited. And she's like, you know, I was like, I have an appointment with Dr. Berlin. Do you want to come with me? So she's like, okay, great. Can I have a coffee? She has a coffee. We get in the car. We drive over to see Elliot. We walk in. I'm hugging him. We're all excited. And I go to use the toilet. And I'm sitting on the toilet and I wipe and I see all this blood.
Oh, my God.
And I was like, oh, shit. And then I stood up, you know, pulled my pants up and I looked in the toilet bowl and there was like quite a bit of blood in there. And I still, you know, I don't know what's going on. I have no concept of anything other than maybe I'm in labor, but I hadn't felt any contractions. And so I went out and I said, hey, Elliot, I'm having a lot of blood. And as I'm talking to him, I can feel more blood, like warm blood pouring in my underwear. And I was like, wait a minute, I'll be back. I go into the bathroom, sit on the toilet, more blood. And I was like, oh shit, this is not good. Like this can't be good. And I clean myself up and I go out and I was like, Elliot, this sounds really bad, but like, and gross, but I need you to come in here and look at this. And my mum came in too. And they looked in the toilet bowl and I looked up at him and he's like, we need to get you to your doctor right away. We need to call your midwife. We need to call your doctor. You need an ultrasound. And there's still more blood. So like I'm wedging all this toilet paper in my underwear. Mum's like totally anxious. We call the doctor. He's on his way to the airport to fly out for Thanksgiving with his family. And I knew this when I signed up for him. I knew he was possibly going to be away for a couple of days, but I had the midwife. So I was like, I got all my bases covered.
Yeah.
So he said, you're going to have to go and see my colleague. You need to get an ultrasound. So we got in the car and we drove to the office. And I called one of my friends on the way, Alicia. She's a spiritual counselor and really incredible woman, deeply connected to spirit, and I'm very close with her. I worked with her a lot during my pregnancy. She said, what's going on? And I said, I don't know. I'm bleeding and it's not stopping. And she said, where's Steve? Where's Scooter? And I said, he's at home. And she's like, does he know? And I said, no. So she said, I'm going to get Michael. We're going to head over to your house. Call me as soon as you know something. So we go to the doctor's office. We get in. It's so bizarre. They've still got like their Halloween decorations. And I'm like a little bit panicked, but I still feel okay. And we walk in and like I'm looking at there's this like little witch hanging from the ceiling on a broom and it says, be very afraid. And I was like, whoa. And the nurse comes and she's like really flustered. And I'm like, and they're like, we need to check your contractions. I said, I'm not having any contractions. Can't we just do the ultrasound? She's like, we need to check your. So I was like, again, I should have said, no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Just do the ultrasound. So I get into this other room. They put this thing around my stomach. There are no contractions. There's so much blood. Then she's like, okay, we need to go into this other room. So I put a towel, I go over, we get into this other room. And I get in there and, the monitor's up. I can see her. I can see her head. I can see her spine. I can see her arms. I can see her legs. And he's just like circling around. And I just felt the energy in the room change. Like I felt like I was like, something's, and I said to him, you're looking for her heartbeat, right? And he said, yeah. And he kept sort of circling around. And I was like, it's not, is it? It's not beating, is it? It's not beating, is it? And he said, no. And I'm so sorry. And I just looked over at my mom and she lost it. And, I lost it. And the first thing I thought was like, what am I going to tell Steve? Like, what am I going to say? What? Like, how do I break this to him? Like, how do I tell him that she's gone, And the nurse comes in and my mum's like hysterical and she touched my mum on the shoulder and she said, you need to be strong for her. And I felt so angry in that moment. Like, don't tell my mum what to do. Don't tell my mom to be strong. Like,
And then a few minutes go by. I'm like hugging my mom. I know I'm going to make the call. And just like this calm came over me, like this calm presence, this quiet. My mind got really quiet.
Yeah.
You know, and I think up until that point, like there was so much anxiety around the birth and doing it right and making the right decisions and the breech and turning her. It was just there was, and the car seat and getting the right diapers and like all this shit. Like there was so much noise in my mind. It was like living in a room with 1,000 televisions on.
Yeah.
And it was almost like just someone pulled the plug out of all the televisions and it went really quiet. And I could hear myself. I could feel myself. And I picked up the phone. I called Steve. And right when he picked up the phone, he opened the front door and Alicia and Michael were there. And they came in and they just sort of counseled him. And they got all the baby stuff and put it in the garage. And then they headed over to the doctor's office and we sat there together as a family. We waited for the midwife to come. And Alicia and Michael just led us through this beautiful prayer.
Yeah.
And we sent light to the hospital. We asked that the doors open for us, that it be beautiful, that we be received and treated with respect and kindness. And then we went to the hospital.
You hear about people when they don't hear a heartbeat or if the baby's heartbeat slows down, they go to an emergency C-section. Like what was the like difference here? Like why didn't they rush you to an emergency C-section? She was gone.
She was gone.
You knew.
Yeah, and the amount of blood, it was like, you know, my mom was freaked out because she wasn't sure if it was her blood or my blood. So like the whole labor, my mom was in the corner like praying, you know, just praying and praying and praying. And
she didn't know if your life was also at risk.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
How did you feel at that point?
I was pretty clear that this was going to be beautiful. Like I was going to make it. I was opening myself to that. Like, and a lot of people are like, why didn't you just have a C-section? It's like, why didn't I just have a C-section? What do you mean? Like, get it over and done with. She's my baby. I want to give birth to her. I want to have my experience.
Yeah.
Just like everybody else. I don't want to just get her out and like I deserve that. I spent 39 weeks waiting to have this moment, to meet this moment. Like why can't I have my moment?
Yeah.
Why can't it be beautiful like everybody else?
Yeah.
And so I went in with that knowingness, like I'm going to be on the ball. I'm going to do my breathing. I'm going to have my shower. I'm going to do everything that we practiced. Because this is my birth.
Yeah.
This is our birth. And this is what I want for us, for her, for me. This is my moment. This is our moment. This is our baby. You know, it's not a thing to just pull out of my body and
numb me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the nurses were awesome. Like the first one that was on the shift, Adam, he was like, listen, if you were my sister, and I'm going to talk to you as if you were my sister, like this is already like devastating enough. You don't need, like, I know you want to labor, you want to give birth to her, you want it to be like natural as possible. But like when the surges come, because they gave me Pitocin to bring on the contractions.
Yeah.
he said, when we start turning up the dial on this drug, it's going to get really intense. And he said, just tap me on the shoulder and let me know, and I'll have the anesthesiologist come in. And I said, okay, thank you so much, you know, for letting me, you know. And he said, because you don't need to experience even more pain, you know. So I really appreciated that. And, you know, like I said, I laboured like every other mother would labour. I was on the ball at one point. I was in the shower, and I just remember like the feeling of the water on my back. Like I felt like it was just, I was so present, probably more present than I've ever been in my whole life. And I was feeling things really deeply.
Yeah.
And I remember Steve standing there holding the IV trolley, you know, that it's on. And I remember standing there and just the water like pouring down my back, staring at my feet. And I just feeling so free, so alive, so present to what was happening. It was like taking a shower for the first time. It was like feeling water on my skin for the first time. And the only way I can really explain that is because like the story of me as a mother and the story of me as how I was going to give birth, like all that was ripped away from me. Like all that was ripped away. And so all that was left was the present moment. And in that present moment, I didn't care if I gave birth in a hospital, in an airport. I didn't care where I was.
Yeah.
I didn't care about the fucking drugs anymore. I didn't care. I took the drugs. I did my breathing. Like this was my birth. I surrendered. Yeah.
And I remember you really honoring this experience.
Yeah.
And cherishing it. And it was so like hard for a lot of people around you to understand, and those people fell away.
Oh yeah.
You know, I remember like sitting around a table with you and like someone saying, let's reflect on the year.
Right.
And there was only like 4 or 5 of us around this table.
Yeah.
And I remember, you know, everyone being like, blah, 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 all this surface shit.
Yeah.
And I remember you saying like how grateful you were for that experience.
I was. Yeah.
And I remember you saying like how hard it was for you though.
Yeah.
Just being really raw and vulnerable and honest. And I remember, you know, someone at the table just being like, you know, why don't you just have another baby? And like, let's move past that.
Yeah.
And I was so flawed. I was so embarrassed. I was so embarrassed because I was like, you know, this is the society we're living in today.
Yeah.
And this is why we hide all of these things, because we're going to get responses like that.
Yeah.
And I remember also doing this like class with you when you got into your erotic dancing, your pole dancing, which is so fucking hard. I don't even know how you do it.
I cut off my hair and started pole dancing.
You're like the strongest human I've ever met. But I remember like we did this class and they were like,
but it's not like any pole dancing. Like you've got to explain it.
It's deeply spiritual.
There are no mirrors. It's candle lit. Yeah.
I remember like there being like this, it was like a master class because the woman that created this like type of pole dancing and this and
sensual
really
meditative
deep,
movement,
like, connection with self and body. It was not just a pole dancing class, and it was like about her and she and like the female, the feminine, the divine.
Yeah, it wasn't about performance.
Not at all. It wasn't about even being like sexual in the sense that we see it today. It was like inner sensuality. Deep. And I remember like there being 100 women to come and see this woman because she was doing a workshop, the founder. And we were all in this room, and I remember being like...
Yeah, she talked us through that meditation.
Like your hands, like a woman's hand.
Yeah.
What we do with our hands.
Yeah.
women.
Yeah. What we hold in our hands.
What we hold.
Yeah.
You know, and she was like, look at your hands.
Yeah. And we had to look at each other's hands.
And look at each other's hands.
Yeah, and we had to think about when was the last time she held somebody she loved that she had to let go of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember like being there that day and I saw Magnolia in your hands. I know that you see this as a gift and I know there's so many blessings that come from this, but like I don't know if I'd ever be able to recover from this.
Yeah, many women don't.
I get angry when we're together because I'm like, she should be sitting here with us too. It makes me angry.
But let me ask you this. How do you know that? She should be here with us. I've been there so many times. How do you know that? You don't. I don't either. And so I sit inside of, not to diminish what you're feeling, is that I don't know. I don't know why things happen the way they happen. I don't know why she came for 39 weeks and lived inside of my body and had to leave. I don't know why babies die. I don't know. And in that place, like, I surrender because I believe that I am a good person. My husband is a good person. I believe the love that we share together is very powerful. But there's not a place in my mind or in my heart or in my consciousness where I feel like, you know, like that shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Because I just don't know. Like, when I put that up against, like, the Byron Katie test, like, is that true? It's like one of her 4 questions, is that true? I was like, well, yeah, it feels true. She shouldn't have died. Okay. Can you be 100% certain that she should not have died? No, I can't.
Can you talk more about this for people that, like, aren't able to see it in this way?
Well,
are there tools that people can use that have gone through what you've gone through to be able to, you know, cope?
Right. Well, I mean, you know, I think, like, Steve kept in the hospital, he was like, what is the teaching? What is the lesson? What is the lesson here? What is the lesson? There's got to be a lesson. I'm going to find this lesson. You know, it's like, I think it goes back to that spiritual psychology thing. It's like, what lens do we want to look at life through? Am I just a human being having a human experience and I'm going to die and that's it and it's over? And all these tragic things are happening for me and they're happening for no reason.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm going to stay in the muck and the mire of all these challenges and live out my life like this? Or am I going to sort of open myself to the possibility that the challenges that I face in my life, the experiences that I face in my life are here to help me evolve, to grow, to learn, to love, to have compassion, to forgive myself, to assess my beliefs and my judgments. You know, it's like the craziest thing. Like, here I am. I spent 39 weeks growing this baby inside of me, getting ready to have her come forward into the world, like doing everything I could in my power to keep her safe and to have a beautiful experience. And, you know, she dies. Like, on a human level, like I was saying before, it's like it's the worst thing that could ever happen. Mm-hmm. But because I was in my school for 2 years, there was this sort of awareness of like, hang on a minute, like maybe something else is happening here. Like maybe there's a reason for this. Maybe there's an opportunity here. Maybe there's a teaching here.
Yeah.
And the whole while I'm in labor, I'm aware that, like, I'm not judging myself. I'm not blaming myself. I'm just in the present moment. Me and her and my husband, and I'm just in the present moment. And it's like, I don't think, like, maybe when I was a child I experienced that, but for so much of my life, I've judged myself, I've blamed myself, I've criticized myself, I've been assessing myself and comparing myself to everybody else, trying to figure out, like, how to become somebody in the world and how to do it right and how to get it perfect and how to be fully researched about everything, like living in, like, my mind.
Yeah.
You know, and here's this moment, this like tragic moment where everything I'd worked towards was being taken away. And in that moment, like, it's so hard to explain to people because it sounds so absurd. I felt so free.
Yeah.
Death it's the microscope under which we look at life. Like we have an opportunity to look at life differently. There are two things that are promised to us: our birth and our death.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And no one knows when that's coming, right? But it's coming. It's coming for all of us. The physical dissolution of this body is coming for all of us.
Yeah.
And I find it so fascinating how little time we give toward, you know, like sitting with that.
Yeah, I find it so crazy that we're not preparing for death.
Yeah.
It's like a really big benchmark in our existence, whether it's spiritual existence or a physical existence. It's like preparing for that moment. And also I find grief to be probably the emotion that's the most hidden from our society, you know, and not dealt with properly.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people don't have the capacity to hold space for that.
Yeah.
You know, and
Most
some people do. And so the journey of moving through my grief is like, well, I'm going to move more towards the people who can sit in that space with me, you know? And I remember one of my friends, Casey, she came and she said, I'm in the neighborhood. Would it be okay to come over? And I was like, yes. And she's like, I just want to come over and rub your feet. And I was like, okay. So she comes over and she bounds in the room with like her blonde hair, like flailing around, like a heart full of sunshine. And she just sort of like very quietly, she got the towels, she got the oil, she got the hot water. And I just laid there under a blanket and she just started massaging my feet. And my mum's just sort of quiet in the background. And as she's massaging my feet, I'm just relaxing more into my body, into the feeling sense in my body. And then all of a sudden, this rolling wave of a howl came rumbling out of me. And I just started sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. And she didn't say anything. She didn't like try to take it away. She just stopped rubbing and she just laid her hands on my shins until it had emptied out and there was nothing left. And then we just looked at one another and I said, thank you. You know, and then there was another moment with my mom. We were sitting at the kitchen table and I was just talking to her about how I was feeling. And then she cut in and she was just sort of giving me some advice and I could feel myself getting angry because I just wanted her to listen to me. And then finally, because I realized she was trying to make me feel better, I just put my hand on her hand and I said, Mom, I just need you to listen to me. Can you just listen? Like I don't need any feedback. I don't need any guidance. I just want someone to listen to me.
Yeah.
And she said, I am so sorry. Thank you so much for letting me know. I'm so sorry. You know, and then another time I had a friend come over. We were making dinner and cutting things up. And she's like, oh, my friend just got pregnant and then she had 3 miscarriages and she tried IVF and it didn't work. And she was just going on and on and on and on about this friend. And I'm sitting there like washing my hands in the sink and I can feel myself getting more and more angry and more agitated because I didn't initiate that conversation. It came out of nowhere. And I turned to her and I said, hey, why are you telling me this? And she just kind of went, shit, I don't know. And I said, do you think it's helpful for me to hear all this information? Like, I'm trying to understand. She said, I don't know. And I said, because it's really not. Like, I really don't want to talk about this right now. I really don't care about your friend.
Yeah.
Happy for her, but like, you know, so it's just this delicate balance, like, as you move through the grieving process of learning how to advocate for yourself, like learning how to be your champion.
Yeah.
And like when people say fucked up shit, like, you know, that's a judgment.
Yeah.
But when people say stuff that's like deeply disturbing or upsetting, like, it's okay to say, listen, this is not helpful. I don't need to hear this right now. Thank you for your opinion. Like, you know, I'm not I don't want this. This is unsolicited guidance. And I think like the next up leveling of that is like, and this is the hardest thing for me to understand in the beginning. It's like, why are people saying these things to us? Why is this friend sending a photo of his newborn baby boy 4 weeks after ours has died? Hey guys, we just had a baby. It's like in my mind, I'm like, do you not get like what? Like, I couldn't even believe it. And like, you know, all these little things that happen. And then finally it was like I had to like zoom out and be like, okay, they're doing this stuff. I don't know why they're doing this stuff. I don't want to assume to know why, but like they must not know. Like they must be trying to be helpful. They must not know that it's not helpful, you know? And then I would go into the space of like, well, they should know, you know, like it's insensitive and blah, blah, blah. And we'd have these conversations together, Steve and I.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I just had to get to the point where I was like, they don't know. They don't know. How could they know what to say, what to do, how to act? They haven't lost a baby.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're very nice for saying that. But I think there's definitely a lack of awareness there.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay to get pissed off and be like real with people, but like for my own sanity.
Yeah.
For my own sanity.
Yeah, right.
I had to let myself know. Like, I've been through this. I know what it feels like they don't.
Right.
They feel uncomfortable for whatever reason. They want to be helpful. They think this is helpful.
This is their version of doing that. Yeah, it's obviously
maybe
people that love you. I know that people that I've witnessed being unaware, I know that they do love you. So it's obviously their own insecurity and projection, right?
Well, we're all doing the best we can.
Yeah.
We're all...
But what would you say to somebody that like has a friend that's experienced this? Like from what I'm hearing, it's really just to hold space. Sometimes words are really damaging. These words, we have to be really precious with them and really careful with them and be aware
of the impact that they can have.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I think as a collective, like if we can teach the community as well, I know we want to say something. We want to make it better.
Yeah, you can't though. You can't
make it better.
You can't. There's nothing you can say that's going to bring that baby back. There's nothing you can say that's going to soothe. You just, like I said, Casey sat there. She put her hands on my shins. She let it happen. But, you know, I met her in the spiritual psychology program. She had the training, she had the tools, she had the resources to be able to hold that kind of space.
Yeah.
So that's what you want to look for in terms of your healing, people who can hold that kind of space. And preferably, if it's within your financial means, a professional who can hold that kind of space. You know.
And like, I know that through your process of healing, you've been turning a lot to writing as well. And I mean, you're a phenomenal writer at my wedding.
That's right.
You read a poem.
I read it that morning. Yeah.
Oh my God. But even do you remember at my wedding?
Yeah, I remember.
The speeches? You read a poem. oh, you are such a force. I don't know what you're going to do in your life, but it's art in the form that it's like encompassing, embodying our existence and our why, and it's healing. It's healing, and I don't know if this experience is like, it's a gift for you because what you've created, you've written this incredible book, a poetry book.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, but I didn't start out to write a poetry book. You know, like that wasn't my intention. Like the writing, like I said, in the 2-year psychology program, I was writing a lot, and I was keeping a journal to Magnolia a lot, and you know, that she was born at 2:26 in the morning, and I think we ended up leaving the hospital around 10:30. I just didn't want to be there anymore. I wanted to get home. I wanted to be in our own space. And, you know, we came home, people delivered food for us. It was really beautiful. Like, I was just so thankful. You know, I spent most of the day laying on the couch. And I remember, like, my mum as a kid, to, like, get me to sleep, she would always, like, run her fingers through my hair. And as a kid, like she'd run them through and then she'd stop, and then I'd open my eyes. So she'd keep going, you know. So this has been a ritual, like a way of soothing my nervous system.
Yeah.
And so when we got home from the hospital, I was laying on the couch, exhausted. She was exhausted. I mean, she came off like a 30 hours of travel into a 15-hour labour, you know, to meet her dead granddaughter, to say goodbye to her, to come home. Like, she was really holding space. Steve was really holding space. And I'm laying on the couch and she's running her fingers through my hair. And out of nowhere, I hear this voice, because I could feel myself wanting to pull away. But I heard this voice, let her touch you. And she just kept running her fingers through my hair. Let her touch you, because it'll be me. This is me touching you. This is how I can get to you now, through her hands. And she just kept running her fingers through my hair. And it's like, and when people hug you and want to hold you, let them hold you, because that will be me holding you. This is how I can be with you now. And when you look into people's eyes, like really look into their eyes, they will be my eyes looking back at you. This is how I can be with you now. Through other people. Other people are going to be my access to you now. And, you know, I was like, wow, that's her. That's her speaking to me. You know, it's like I just knew it from the tone in my journals. And after Mum was done, I told her, I was like, Mum, as you were running your fingers through my hair, this is what I was hearing. I feel like I'm hearing Magnolia. And I told Steve, and Steve was like, wow. And then that night I went to bed. And like around, I don't know, 1:32 in the morning, like I was just feeling really restless. And I could hear like just these words sort of in my mind repeating over and over again. And I'm like, turning over, they wouldn't go away, turning over, they wouldn't go away. I had a drink of water, they wouldn't go away. And then finally I was like, I'm just going to write them down. So I went over to Steve's desk and I got like a pad of paper. And I went and sat on the bathroom floor and I just started stream of consciousness writing. These blood-stained tears that weep from my sacred and holy parts are not tears of pain, but tears of the most joyous kind. And it just kept going. Tears of the most grateful kind. Tears of an opening, the opening of my heart and the expansion of my soul. These blood-stained tears that weep from my sacred and holy parts, like speak the rite of passage that I have passed. This was not the birth I had intended, nor would I have ever chosen. But this something was written long before I remember, and it just went on and on and on and on and on. And then I put it to the side. I went to bed, fell straight to sleep. I woke up the next morning and I read it and I was like, wow. And then I read it to Steve and he's like, wow. And it was really like the poem really encompassed
my deep gratitude for the awakening that I experienced that day while I was in labor, the awakening that I'd prayed and meditated and done yoga, and I'd been to like ashrams, and I'd done all this stuff. I'd spent my whole life trying to access the peace, trying to access the quiet, trying to access the stillness, trying to get to this godlike, holy, peaceful, still place, right? Yoga, meditation, fasting, I tried it all and touched into that moment from time to time, touched into that space of stillness and oneness. But like when I held her in my arms, when I looked at that little body, when I like felt the love that I felt for her, when I felt the love I felt for Steve, when I felt the love in that room, it was like, you know, it really affected me. And I felt like, it's so funny, I'd spent my whole life searching for the stillness, and she was stillborn. I felt my whole life searching for the peace. And in that moment of holding her, in that moment of exhaustion, of that moment of, I felt so much peace, you know?
Yeah.
And so I ended up carrying this pad of paper around the house. You know, I had him upstairs, I had him downstairs, and just every now and again, like something would drop in, and it was either just like her voice, or it was like just an awareness around what was happening, like documenting my healing.
Yeah.
You know, and don't get me wrong, it wasn't a cakewalk. It wasn't like peaceful. There were moments where he would run around the house and close and lock all the windows because I was having a rage fit, and he was afraid that the neighbors would call the police. Like, I have heard sounds come out of this body that I didn't even know existed in the universe. Like that deep wail grief cry of a mother, like it's unlike anything you've ever experienced. But like, this is the process of grieving. Like this is an expression of my love and my longing. You know, it's like, you know, they say in the beginning, it's like these waves of grief come, like massive waves, and they like take you under, and you don't know if you're ever going to surface again, but eventually you do. And then slowly, as the years unfold, it's been 8.5 years now, the waves get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And sometimes there's a big wave that will come, but you know, 8.5 years out now, it's like it's not as drastic as it used to be. Like there is a pathway through, and like my pathway through is my pathway through. It's like everyone's journey with loss and grief is going to be different, and it should be different. We're different. Our life experiences are different, but you know, without even knowing it, coming back to that framework of like, you know, I just think it was a miracle that I entered that 2-year program before this experience happened. It was almost like the universe was preparing me for this experience.
Yeah.
You know, and I share because, you know, well, going back to the book, you know, over the course of 12 months, I started to accumulate a lot of writing, and I started sharing it.
Yeah.
I'm not on Facebook anymore, but I started sharing it on Facebook, and the feedback that came back to me was just like overwhelmingly beautiful and inspiring, and thank you so much. And, you know, more recently sharing things on Instagram. But it's like, you know, I had a friend pull me aside once, I think maybe 3 years into my healing, and she's like, you know those poems you write? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, yeah, I don't think they're just for you. I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, I don't believe that writing came through you just for you. Like, I know it's been healing for you, but she said, I think it could be healing for other people.
Absolutely.
To receive these words. And I think you should make a book. And then another person, I think you should make a book. And then another person, like, you know, there's that poem, like, I think you need to make a book, you know. So it started coming to me, like, to put it together in book form.
How do you feel about this? Because the journey of this writing. I mean, I've seen you immerse yourself in it completely, and I've read these words and they're powerful. I've read a lot in my life, but this is really special. So how do you feel? What is your intention with this book?
Healing.
Yeah.
Healing, awareness, love, compassion, kindness, self-empathy, and to really, to share my experience and to sort of plant a seed in the minds and hearts of other parents that, well, first of all, you're not alone. There are so many of us who are on this journey together, and we are a tribe now.
Have you met a lot of women that have been through this now?
Yeah, and it's not the club that anyone wants to belong to, but like you're in it, I'm in it. And so like it's so deeply healing.
How do you find other women?
They find you. It just happens. Yeah. I mean, there's a really great resource online called Still Standing. It's a magazine. And like people write in about their experiences of losing a child.
Wow.
So there are so many stories, and we can put a link to that, in the show notes. But yeah, many resources, and there are many amazing books. Pippa Vosper just launched a book called Beyond Grief. There's another beautiful book called Still. There's so many resources out there, but in terms of like actually meeting parents, you just have to open your mouth and start talking about it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, I know this person and I know that person and my sister and my mother. Like I remember I was in Air One once, and the guy was checking me out, and I don't know why. I just started talking about, he said, what do you do? And I said, well, at the moment I'm not really doing anything. I just lost a child. I'm writing. I think I'm going to make a book. And he said, oh, how did your baby die? And I said, well, she was stillborn. And he said, oh, my sister was stillborn. And I said, really? And she said, yeah. And I was a little boy. I was 3 years old, and I didn't know what was going on, why my mum was so sad all the time. And I did the best I could to help my mom, but it never seemed like enough. And I've carried that with me my whole life. Like I was never able to take away that pain. And I said, it wasn't your pain to take away. And he said, when you get this book, I would love to read it. Yeah. So, it's like, people are out there, and I think conversations like this are really important because it's going to create a bridge for those of us who have lost, in a sense, bridging us back into the birthing community.
Yeah. Because
in a sense, it can really feel like you live on an isolated island called child loss, So, I mean, I have some poems I would love to read, but I also, I keep journaling, so keep writing. I think I even encourage, people to keep a journal to their child and write to them, write down how you're feeling, and let each other share in that communal space and ritualize this non-physical relationship, because I don't believe that we're just flesh and blood and when we die, it's done. Like I said in the beginning of the interview, I think, there is a vast intelligence in our body, a consciousness that exists beyond time and space, and we're here for just a moment in time. Yeah. So her death really awoken in me, a newfound sense of the miraculous, of how miraculous life is, and how precious it is. And I'm just so glad I didn't wait those 39 weeks to connect with her. It's seem so weird to talk to your belly, but there's a baby in there and it's listening, and there's, so don't wait. And I'm so glad I didn't wait, because had I waited and lost her, I really, really, really would have regretted that time of not connecting. But I connected with her. Yeah. I chanted to her. I sang to her in the shower I did. I wrote to her. I had a relationship with her. Yeah. And
you still do.
Yeah, and I still do. And I'm so thankful for that.
You really do. She's everywhere.
Yeah. So, I would love to read some poems.
Let's hear from
and then maybe I'll just start with a little journal
entry because I was like, what are we going to talk about? Like, there's so much to talk about. I mean, we could do many episodes just on the different facets of healing.
I haven't even,
there's so much to unpack.
We haven't even scraped the surface on this.
Yeah.
This is a journey that we're on. And like, we want to create a platform for you. Even other mums that have been through this. I think we have to have many conversations, and our listeners should also write in and talk about what they want to hear and what they want to talk about around this topic. And ask questions.
Yeah, like if you're a friend who has a friend who's lost a baby, like, and you don't know how to support, like writing in questions about that. And really more than anything, I mean, I think, during the COVID pandemic, I was hosting, 4-time weekly poetry sessions online on Zoom with groups of like 15, 16 people. And we would do that, we would do a centering process in the beginning, like a short meditation, grounding. We would read, I covered different poets each week. We would read from their writing, and then I would give everyone a writing prompt, set a timer, and we'd all write. And then whoever felt called to share at the end would share. And it was so powerful because people, we were so isolated at that point.
Yeah.
But to be able to share our writing, and people who'd never written before, like I had a friend who's like a school teacher. She's like, I'm a math teacher. Like I don't write poetry. And I'm like, just come. And ended up writing the shortest, just most amazing, heartfelt piece.
It's so healing. I've been to your workshops, your writing workshops that you do.
Yeah.
I mean, everything you do is magical.
Just creating environments for people to share.
This episode has been so like healing for me, even to just be in this space with you. And I'm just so grateful that you've shared with us today. And I hope we can talk more about this and go into this more. But for now, I would love for you to share where our listeners can find you.
Okay, great. So my Instagram page, my website, primarily those two sources.
And you have a book coming out?
Yeah.
Or out, maybe, by now. What is it called?
She Was Born, Words on Loss and Liberation. And it's a really unique book because it's all poetry.
Yeah.
And it includes the voice of the father. So there's a piece in there from my husband called A Father's Thoughts that's really beautiful, reflecting on his own experience through the loss and through the grieving process and everything that he's learned. And so in the sense, everything that I've sort of read in that realm of child loss has been from the voice of the mother.
And we can buy that book from your website.
Yeah, you can buy it from my website.
Amazing.
And then it will be also released on Amazon.
And with that, I'm going to leave you guys with this blessing of Libby's words.
Okay, this was a little journal entry that I did when Nicole asked me to come and be on the podcast. I was like, what do I want to talk about? So this is my journal entry, the miracle. The miracle came simply in allowing myself to be with her silence, to be with the devastation, to be with the longing, to be with the fear, to be with the shock and the terror and the grief and the love. The miracle came in the darkness, in the not knowing, in the undoing, in the opening, to voicing my fears and feeling the agony. The miracle was the discovery of myself, the source of something inside of me, like finding a diamond amongst the mud, a part of me once sought in the world, found here, a buried treasure in the darkness, and the knowing that it was here all along, waiting for me to turn towards it, all along waiting for me to look in the one place I never thought to look, inside myself. And the grief and the rage and the pain and the deathly silence awoke in me a new vision of life and myself in it. New perceptions, a simplicity I couldn't grasp before. I once prostrated at the feet of statues. I once sung ancient chants in earnest. I once thought there was a path to God, but by no means did I believe that route ran straight through the center of my suffering. I had no idea the love I could feel here in the shadows. This nightmare became the reality I would awaken from over and over and over again to discover more love than I could voice. So I picked up the pen and I used the page to pray, to pour out my pain, to listen, to receive the guidance now available to my opened ears. I was deaf before her, stuck inside, living in a room with 1,000 televisions, constantly receiving feedback from the outside world, measuring, reading, listening to every voice but the one within. I had knocked on many doors looking for peace, for calm, for quiet, for stillness. I had sat at the feet of many great people. I had knocked on every door except my own. I wanted others, outer authorities, to tell me which way to go, how to find the comfort in knowing. She was the teacher that came. She was the teacher that came, that helped me see that I did not need to rely upon outer authorities. I had raised them up so high, and she had helped me see that there is no middleman, that this one precious human life is our shot to know that we are the miracle. And the miracle, the miraculous, lives in us, through us. She was the one who would teach me how to value life, even in her passing. Through her death, her short time here, I came to understand what a gift this life is, and how every single moment, every single breath, every heartbeat, every smile, every hug, every laugh, every tear is an opportunity to be grateful for this experience to grow, for this experience to love, for this experience to learn. I want to welcome her presence even more fully into my life. I want to know that the love continues long after this costume is removed, and that nothing is more worthy of my attention than this life that has been given to me. This is titled In My Veins. The body that held her, not the solid ground beneath my feet. The silky golden sand running through my fingers. Nothing real, not her, just an image, never to be touched again. But she is eternal. She is the life in my veins. The beginning. I remember the dark room, the soft bed, me silently praying to you. I remember the shower, the hot water on my skin, the steam, the heat caressing me. I remember the large blue ball filled with air holding our weight as I rocked back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I remember the cool linoleum floor beneath my feet, the worn-out cotton gown draped soft around my body. I remember swaying back and forth, focusing, breathing, listening. I remember smiling at your father's distressed face, hoping my love could melt it. I remember lifetimes of heaviness falling away, lifetimes of fear, your love tearing me open. In one single moment, you took everything, shattering my perfect vision. Your father's lips pressed against mine, an ocean crashing between us. I felt his horror, everything taken. I felt it, but I was too far gone. Everything. I walk into your room. I run my fingers over the striped cotton leggings. I hold the soft sweaters, your socks in my hands. I stand in the silence. I open the blue satin box from the hospital. I untie the bow and I stare at the pictures of you. I take out the hat you were wearing. I press it to my lips. I drink in the smell of you. I gaze at your one solitary footprint, black on white paper. I sit on the floor. I stare at the Hungry Caterpillar book, the bottles, your crib. I examine the crystal hanging in the window. There are tiny rainbow specks dancing across the walls. There is light in this room. I imagine you here. I hold on to these details, the story of your birth, the day I will never forget. I tell everyone who will listen how precious you were, how beautiful, how everything reminds me of you. The truth of it all. When the mask drops to the ground and smashes into 1,000 messy pieces, I am left with myself. I am left with the grief that is a constant pulse in my blood, in my breath. I am left with the memory of stillness. I am left with the image of her limp body lying on the table as Alex, Alicia, and my mother bathe her. I'm left with this immense longing that lives in my heart, that is lodged in my throat, along with these words that cannot seem to describe the disappointment I felt as he pushed me down the hallway past all the other mothers. When the public face that covers the truth of my grief falls away, I am left with the memory of my mother with her bloodshot eyes off a 20-hour flight from Perth, waiting to meet her dead granddaughter. I'm left with the tears I shed when Steve finally decided to hold Magnolia, when he opened his shirt and clutched her to his chest. When the mask drops to the ground and smashes into 1,000 messy pieces, I am left with the truth of it all, not the picture I have painted for you. That was a pretty intense one. You know, because there's like the face that we wear on the outside for the public, and there's like the reality of what we're going through inside the space of our own hearts. And I think the beauty of these conversations is, yes, it lets people know, like, you're not alone, and it's okay to unravel. Like, maybe the unraveling is where we actually find ourselves, in the letting go, when we drop the facade, when we stop trying so hard, when we surrender to what is instead of what we think should be. There's so much freedom in that, so much healing, so much levity. Yeah, there's a really pretty one here from her, actually. It's like the first time you hear her voice in the book. It's called Don't Look For Me. And again, I like walked into her room and I was looking through all her stuff and I heard her voice. Don't look for me. Don't look for me in that room, for I am not there. Don't look for me in the drawers, amongst the clothes, nor the pages of those fairy tale books. The room you made, the soft toys, diapers, clothing, and crib, none of these things point to the magnificence. When you stop wandering and wandering around the circles you've traced, I am right here. Don't look for me in that room, for I am not there. I am in the spaces, the faces, the feet walking. I am the noise in the wind and the sunlight that burns. I am in the grief, alive and shaking, not destroyed, but stronger. I am in the air, in your lungs, in your heart. I am flowing in your bloodstream, our intermingled cells. I am in the laughter, his eyelashes, the wrinkled sheets and folds of your glorious body. There is nothing in this world that you could do to stop this. Let it burn like fire and sun. Let it finish what was begun that early morning when you birthed the body that bore my name. Let us remember the preciousness that lifted you anew, that removed what wasn't true. Let go of your stories so you may see. There is nothing in this world that could stop this love.
I have the deepest respect for you, and I'm very grateful for you. Thank you for being on today.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Village podcast, normalizing conversations and experiences in pregnancy, childbirth, postpartum, and motherhood. We are here to serve, and we really want to hear from you. So feel free to share, comment, like, and subscribe to keep this village growing. We are eternally grateful for you being with us and sharing space today.